Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today is Thursday, April 17th, around 9:30. Monday, Thursday, you might say.
Yes.
Kind of a big day in the church world.
Yes.
So, how are you doing this morning, Joe?
I'm doing all right. How are you? It's going to be
good.
like in the 80s today.
I think even 90s.
90s today, 60s tomorrow.
And then cold and rainy on Saturday. Dude,
Yeah.
I'm still obviously mourning your departure, but you might at least get some more consistent weather in Atlanta.
I guess it's humid all the time. So
Yeah.
I think as long as the humidity doesn't bother you too much, eat you up and make you question the meaning of life, then you're going to be okay, I think.
It's a hot Atlanta, right? That's the thing, right?
Hot Atlantis, that's what they call it.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, we're just not going to think about you leaving yet. We're going to just live in denial, like you
Yes.
said, for a few more weeks, and we're going to just keep this train rolling.
Yeah.
That's future Matt and Joe's problem to work with.
That's right.
So-
and they will allow us to live in denial, to defer it till then, I think. So
Okay,
they're
good.
they're kind souls.
Let's do that then.
All right.
Okay, well, we just mentioned this is Holy Week, Monday, Thursday. I remember a couple years ago, we did a whole Monday, Thursday episode where we kind of went through what does that actually mean and some of the historical stuff. I thought we could do something kind of similar today where I know, I think in whether I can't remember if it was trending on one of your sermons, you've kind of mentioned that you've done some research and you're interested in atonement theory.
Okay.
Why did Jesus have to die?
Right.
And what does that have to do with our relationship with God and what actually happened
Yes.
in those moments? And I think that'd be something interesting for us to talk about. Because
Okay.
honestly, I think even for mature believers, we have a kind of a decent handle on like why Jesus had to die. Like we've kind of been taught in order for us to have a relationship with God, we have sin. There needs to be something that bridges that gap. We all have kind of a fuzzy understanding of it, but I think even for mature believers, if you stop to think about it, you might still have questions like, why did that really have to happen? Why was that the best option?
Yeah.
So I know this is something that you've, of course, done a lot of research on, have some
Sure.
opinions on the different theories. Because some people, I did some quick research this morning. There's at least 5, 6, 7 different kind of common theories out there about why this happened the way that it did. So
Yeah.
where should we start, Joe?
Well, this is a great question. I think the reason that it's something that we talk about a lot is not just because of the mystery around Easter, but this tended to be like a popular thing to discuss and decide within the last 15 years of more popular theology. The academy, they've kind of settled into camps, and there's not really a lot of fighting going on here. But I think because there's always going to be this push and pull between more fundamentalist and more progressive theologies in America. When it comes to the cross, this is where the conservatives or more fundamentalists feel like they've got a chance to gain some ground because this is the story. I mean, God sent his son, according to the New Testament's witness, and it seemed to be in the plan to die on the cross. It didn't just like happen because of happenstance. This seemed to be a part of the plan, right?
Yeah.
And then so, whereas the conservative would, the fundamentalists might accuse the progressive theology to be kind of light on sin. This is where we could say, no, sin seems to be serious because of how the cross is treated in the New Testament documents. So you had like some popular preachers. They resurrected the particular like the substitution atonement theory, which is that all of us were dead in sin. Dead and gone, unless somebody could take our place. And the language they use comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, where Paul says, God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Okay, Luther called this the great exchange. Our sin was exchanged to Jesus, and Jesus exchanged his righteousness to us so that we could go free. So this has been a popular opinion of many. There's even worship songs today where I think even our youth sang it on Student Sunday, that hell lost another one, whenever someone becomes a Christian, right? So we're all kind of locked away because of the wages of sin is death, right? And punishment. And Jesus sets us free because of that. I think it's just curious to discover that this substitution atonement theory wasn't popular until maybe about 1000 or a little bit earlier than that.
Okay.
But it seemed to replace a different assumption about the cross, which was this Christus Victor, where Jesus more is victorious over the powers of evil, okay? And more of a ransom theory was the case. So instead of us being like, before God, God's a judge, we're in a courtroom guilty, it stayed with, it's like, no, like the world is full of bondages, and we are held in captivity, and Jesus is like a ransom so that we could go free. So there's still kind of the exchange component there,
Okay.
but there certainly is like a it's not so much God in the courtroom ready to bring down the law upon us, but it's, no, God in his benevolence allows Jesus to be a ransom payment for all of humanity. But then here's the trick on the devil. Jesus is a son of God, and so he's able to be raised and to be freed himself. And so everyone goes free, and the enemy comes up empty because of that. So those are the two dominant theories. And that seems to be working in the background of a lot of the chatter about this, even in the church fathers, the early Christian thinkers. I mean, the creeds, all they say is that for us and for our salvation, Jesus came. It doesn't spell out all the specifics. And so this is where our imaginations, some scripture references, and alluding to, the sacrificial system of the Old Testament and so on and so forth, we begin to fill in what we think it might mean, because you said it in your opening, like, this is a fuzzy picture. We have an idea, but it's a fuzzy idea.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's crystal clear which one of these theories works the best. That's why we've got a few dominant ones that have been around for a long, long time. And we continue to think about them as we continue to navigate life and faith and what it means to be reconciled to God. Because rightfully so. I mean, you brought the question, like, was this truly the only way that God could get his creation out of this bind?
Yeah.
Was it, he had to send his son? Like, that was the only way to do that. And so feminist scholars in the 20th century, they began to say, why would a father do this to a child? Isn't there a better way to talk about this if we're going to try to, save the reputation of our God? And so there's some further theories developed from there. And so I think what I would say is this. What is the problem that the Bible presents from the very beginning? And then how does Jesus' atonement on the cross fix that problem? I think if we go to Genesis 3, if truly, like Genesis 3, the fall of humanity is the problem, the fracture is not just between humans and God, but it's also between humans and one another, humans within ourselves, and then humans in creation. And so the only thing that I would critique, maybe the penal substitutionary atonement, the popular one that you hear like Francis Chan and Mark Driscoll and John Piper and all these guys say, is that it seems to only mend the fracture between us and God. It leaves the others open.
Okay.
And so I would say if it leaves those open, then we need to go back to the drawing board, because it doesn't fix the problem that the scripture story presents. And so let's go back and do some thinking about what might be a better way to articulate what Jesus does on the cross, because those other things are certainly on God's mind when it comes to fixing all of creation and the story of redemption that we call it. So
I wonder, there's part of me I think there's something deep within us. It's probably the sense of justice that we mirror from God, right? I think there's something in us that's like, if something is wrong, it needs to be righted, and the wrong needs to be punished. Like that's a very human, probably since, I don't know, I would imagine that's a very old thought.
Right.
Something goes wrong, it should be corrected, and whoever did something wrong needs to be punished. Probably isn't the right word, but at least we need to learn from our mistakes. Like that's I would imagine, pretty human thing. So is that kind of at the heart of this? Is that wrongs need to be righted, and so that I guess to me, it kind of just makes sense. It seems like a very human solution.
Yes. And
maybe I kind of wonder, and God in his kindness gave a solution that humans can understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There may have been another way, but he knew that our minds would understand this right and wrong, correct. Maybe that's why he chose this, is because it kind of makes sense to us. I understand, like it's unfathomable for us to imagine a father doing this.
Yeah.
But I wonder, in a weird way, is this his kindness explaining a difficult concept in a way that our little feeble minds can understand? Does that make sense?
It does. So I think we need to broaden our idea of justice. So justice is not just this person did wrong. Yeah. They're caught. They must now pay the penalty. But a fully orbed view of justice is, can we stop this from happening in the future? Yeah. So I think Martin Luther King Jr. popularized this parable of, imagine that you and I go on a hike, and as we get higher and higher up on this mountain, we see people like falling down and hurting themselves. They're in bad shape because of their fall during this hike. Yeah. There's several ways that we could tend to that. We could have ambulances ready for these people after they fall. Yeah. But that's only going to help a little bit. But like, maybe the best thing would be is to build the fence around the most dangerous places so that people stop falling, right? Yeah. And so I think that the cross needs to not just settle the score, but I think it needs to pave a way for renewal. It needs to pave the way for the better world, and not just to recover like some Garden of Eden bliss. I don't know if that's the Bible's vision.
Yeah.
Because it's actually going forward to a crowded city of redeemed people from all walks of life, right? And so I think the question that we have to ask is, okay, what did the cross settle, but then what does it open up? And I would recommend a chapter from N.T. Wright's book, Simply Jesus, because he was reading through the Gospels again. And if the antagonism in God's world is involved with a person named the devil or Satan, I mean, the original definition of that biblical term is the accuser.
Yeah.
And so accusation against God and against God's created ones seems to be the thing that needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
And so what we have in the Gospels is accusations all the time. This is probably the new atonement theory. I don't think N.T. Wright would stamp his name on it, but we could call it the accusation atonement theory.
Okay.
But this world is full of antagonisms. People accuse one another. Therefore, we take vengeance on one another. It's tearing God's world apart.
Yeah.
We accuse God of doing nothing about it, and so now we've got a beef with God. And so how does this all gets settled? And so in the gospel, you have like Jesus' family accusing him of being out of his mind. You've got his opponents accusing him of being misled. You even got his disciples accusing him of missing the mark.
Yeah.
And so he, like, all that seems to rush together. Even the brigands next to him on the cross, in a couple of the gospel narratives, are accusing him as well.
Yeah.
It's like nothing is just accusation and hate and division within God's world. But then, like, at the cross, Jesus doesn't return that with accusation. He could have, because he's an innocent one. He could say, no, I'm in the right, you're in the wrong.
Yeah, right.
But he says, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And the Roman centurion overseeing the crucifixion, he says, truly, this is the Son of God.
Yeah.
So something changes at the cross too.
Yeah.
Forgiveness paves a new way forward to where now Paul would say, in a place like Romans chapter 8, there's now no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus.
Yeah.
And you've got Jesus giving an admonition post-resurrection to his friends. Extend forgiveness to one another. Live at peace and unity with one another. Paul will say in the book of Romans, which is like its high point, receive one another as God in Christ has received you, right? And so I think that we've got to think through that as well. It's not just, can we get the scale back to zero, but how can we not return God's creation back to where it was before Jesus came on the cross?
Yeah.
And I think that the atonement has to pave the way for something new.
Yeah.
And so as people are thinking through this, I would just say, once again, what's the problem the Bible presents? How can the cross truly fix that? And then how is it not just like patching it up, but how is it feeding us forward to God's desired new world where everything is made new, which is the heart of the message that Jesus came to bring and his followers continue to teach even after his ascension. How can we imagine a brand new world as we come to Easter Sunday after Sunday? And then how does a death on a cross, factor into all that?
Yeah.
So this is why we have a lot to think about for this.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you for that's really helpful.
Yeah.
That was a good walkthrough.
Yeah.
One thing that people I think sometimes struggle with, and maybe even with this specific issue, you mentioned that like for the first 1,000 years of Christianity, they had a kind of a dominant idea, and then it kind of shifted, and then now there's kind of a different dominant idea. Odds are it might shift again, right?
100%.
So I know that's one of these things I think people will wrestle with Christianity because these are supposed to be timeless truths, right? This is truth.
Yeah.
But it kind of seems like some of these things evolve with culture mostly. Sometimes there's new research or artifacts or something that kind of shift something, but a lot of times it's like, okay, we went too far this way. We need to course correct. Maybe this is what God meant. If someone hears something like you just said, and they're like, man, but I thought surely God. There's one answer why God did this, right? So when things kind of shift with time, what would you, if someone is kind of just questioning that, what would you say?
That's a great question. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of how these things get reworked. And it's simply because we may not be able to know truth objectively in this regard. It's always subjective. And I think if you look at the way atonement conversation has changed, it changed when like culture shifted. So first 1,000 years of Christianity, the Christian world was existing in like a feudal society where you looked to a feudal lord as your protector.
Yeah.
And so, but if you got a bad one, it'd be nice if he got replaced. And so the atonement theory seems to take shape of what they know to be true. Okay.
Yeah, right.
And it changes to this law court term of God's the judge and we're guilty whenever like nation states began to emerge, when people could actually appeal for their personal rights and stuff like that. And so the reason that this thing changes is because, as the Talmud says, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. You know what I mean? And so I think that we only find meaning in something that we could truly understand. And so I think that's why this thing continues to change. And I think it changed once again into this, what they call the moral improvement theory, kind of in Victorian England, when people began to see how heroic it was when people loved to even lay down their life for somebody else. And so even like the Gettys have that song "In Christ Alone." There's a verse, and the Gettys are very reformed, so they're going to take the substitution view. And so they say, on the cross when Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. So to say like God's wrath can only be satisfied in this way. Well, some people are changing the lyrics and saying the love of God is magnified. So it wasn't like God needed the blood in order to cover the sins, because that could potentially paint God in a really unfortunate picture as this kind of venge-filled God. But if God comes to his world and his world rejects him, and he doesn't destroy it, but he wants to work within it, he wants to try to fix it, even to the point where this world crucifies its God, and he comes back and he doesn't like retaliate, but he extends forgiveness. Like, that's the greatest virtue that anyone could ever express in regards to injustice coming to them. And so I just think that the reason these things continue to change in our conversations is because we continue to think through what is good, what is noble, what would be the highest thing. Because what we can say in all these different atonement theories is Jesus does the highest thing that anybody could conceive at that time. That's what the cross was. It was a triumph. It wasn't a devastation. It was a triumph. He was enthroned as king as he did it, right? And so as we think about what is the greatest and highest good, I think that's how we map what the cross does to that, because we can't think of any other example in all of human history better than this. And so this has to completely exemplify the greatest thing that we can think of. So I think that's why it changes over time.
That's well put. Okay, as we maybe start to wrap up here, no, it's been really helpful. I feel like I'm learning a lot, and it's good insight. So maybe as we're wrapping up, so today's Monday, Thursday, we got Good Friday, we've got services here at Ridgepoint. We got services out the wazoo over the next few days. Just come here. There's probably some service happening.
It's a very, very technical word, wazoo.
At the wazoo. Just come, and there's probably a service happening.
Yes.
But maybe if people are coming to one of those services, what are some things that you would like for them just to kind of ponder? If it's Good Friday and they're looking at the cross and they're grateful for Jesus' sacrifice, that's kind of the heavy service where the weight of the moment is pretty, we could feel it, right? Sunday's more of the celebratory, Jesus rose, we're grateful. With some of this kind of atonement stuff in mind, what would you have people really dwell on this weekend? What's a thought or a moment or maybe a new insight that wherever they land on this atonement theory stuff, like you said, either way, Jesus did the ultimate sacrifice. It's the best thing we can think of, right? So wherever you land on some of the details, it's still the best thing imaginable.
Yes.
Do you have a thought you want people to kind of dwell on this weekend?
Maybe two things. I think it's in the book of Ecclesiastes where it says, God's in heaven, we're on earth, therefore let our words be few. I think this is one of those moments where we need to get into the songs. We need to look around the room at everyone worshiping with us. If you go to Good Friday and you have communion in your hand, think about Jesus offering it to his friends. Try to get swept up in the story and allow yourself to be placed there with it. And let your words be few. Let my words be few. And just allow it to wash over us. And I think it will work on us in a deep way. I think sometimes in very powerful, poignant moments, we try to chill it by talking and maybe even making light of it. But this is a moment where I think we just need to take it in and to just go to service, hang with our friends, enjoy the meals, enjoy the nap, hopefully Sunday afternoon, and then reflect all of life is if the scripture's true, he holds us and all things together by his words. The cross and the resurrection afforded all of our life to be held together because of this benevolent God. And that needs to be delighted in and not maybe explained on a big, whiteboard. Just allow our words to be few. And then one of my favorite things actually about Easter comes from a radical scholar named Kester Bruin. That's his real name. Kester Bruin. Not brewing, but Bruin.
I think you've quoted him before. I remember the name. So,
but he had this cool reflection on Easter. Jesus' friends went to the tomb heavy-hearted. And in mourning, they wanted to tend to his body for the next phase of burial. They were in grief and sadness. Eyes were tear-filled. Through the veil of tears did Mary witness everything at the empty tomb. And that's where Jesus tended to her. And Kester Bruin's got this great line, and I think about it every Easter. He says, may the tombs that we tend to be found empty and open. And what he means by that is, if Jesus is raised, this is what the church fathers said, if Jesus is raised, God brought the whole world out with him. You and I have things unfortunate in our life, things that we're waiting on, things that we're devastated by, things that we're ashamed of. And those things represent tombs. And they hold a great gravity of sadness in our life. Yeah. Maybe on Easter Sunday, we can go to those things. Maybe we're in the midst of grief because we just lost a loved one. Maybe we're waiting for an answer of prayer. It hasn't come yet. Maybe we feel stuck and we want to get going on our destiny, and we feel like we're being shorted. We feel like we're not giving all of our gifts. Whatever it is, we're estranged from a family member. We go to those tombs like the followers of Jesus with heavy hearts, ready to put another layer of sadness onto that. Yeah. But maybe this Easter we'll find it empty and open, and we'll find freedom to walk away from the sadness that's been constraining us, and learn to move on. And so that's why the first thing I think of every Easter morning is, may the tombs that I've been tending to be found empty and open. Yeah, that's good. So I think it's even a Mumford & Sons song, that talks about who's going to roll your stone away. Yeah. We all have stones that we need to have rolled away. And maybe God in his goodness will allow a few of those to be rolled away this Easter season, and we can celebrate not just what happened in the past, but also the empty tombs of today, and the freedom that we can find when we know that God is still on our side and God's still working for us. I think that's something I would look for this weekend.
No, that's good. Another thing I've heard, we've probably said it here, probably every year, probably most churches say this, but I think it's also helpful and good for us to really take each day of the Easter week at a time. So like not enjoy, but take advantage of Good Friday. Like, don't rush to the good news of Easter. Take a minute to remember what Good Friday was. Right. And even Saturday, like, they were waiting. Like, they were still in mourning and they didn't know what the future held. They were waiting in an awkward and horrible moment. Like that, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are all distinct days. And I think sometimes we get caught up in just celebrating Easter, and it's mostly the resurrection. But I think taking a moment to remember all of those moments, I think, is also good for our souls, to remind us what everything that happened that week, and not just the resurrection, but each of the little parts of the story. I think it's good for our souls.
I think it's great. And since it's Maundy Thursday, this is where Jesus gave us the new command to love. Yeah. Love one another as I have loved you. So it's not just love like you've done in the past. Right. But God's got infinite love. And so let your love go deeper and wider. Let it be riskier. Let it be more forgiving, more encouraging, more whatever. And so I think that would be something to put in the front of mind today is, how can we be loved? Because this is the signpost that we're disciples, not because we attend church or because of the radio station we listen to, when we get in the groceries. They'll know you're my disciples by your love, particularly love for one another. Yeah. And so maybe that could be our focus today. And because of that, we'd honor the events of Holy Week and the season of Easter because of it.
Yeah, that's good, man. Thank you. Yep. I can always count on you for... Again, you didn't know what we were talking about. You had all this just on the top of your head. I don't know how your brain works, Joe, but it's very impressive.
I forget so many other things. so don't be too impressed, man. I forget where I park my car all the time.
Well, I can help you with that. Okay. And you can teach me everything I don't know. All right, man. Well, thanks for that. It was good insight. So thanks for the conversation. Once again, thanks to all of you, our friends. Hope to see you this weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Go to our website. Just come. There's something happening here. Just come.
It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Have a good weekend, everybody.
See you next time.